Our chosen topic was to find some of the many languages spoken around the Portland State campus. Before we had narrowed our topic down, we were inspired by this model that displays the geographic origin of PSU students at the time of their admission, found on PSU's Office of Institutional Research and Planning page. While this map was created for Fall 2016, which is the latest release, it can't be far off from Fall 2017. Here we see most of the countries of the world highlighted, which supports our inference that there are a wide variety of languages spoken on campus. We originally wanted to look at Portland State campus as a whole, but ultimately decided that the subject would be too broad. After checking out the PSU Library, the Multicultural Center, and parts of Newburger Hall, we went forth with the food cart pods dispersed around campus. We focused on the pod behind the library and the one on 4th Avenue at which we gathered our interviews. Being familiar with campus, we knew going in that there were a lot of international food carts on campus in the pods by the library and on 5th and 4th Avenues. We knew it would be easy to find English L2 speakers, but of course we still had to hold some interviews. We initially began searching bulletin boards for evidence of languages other than English on campus. We found mostly examples with some combination of English and a second language, with rare occurrences of flyers being only in another language or with little English. What was sometimes more surprising than the languages we found was the lack of signage in other languages, and what signs and flyers only used another language in the title. Here are a few interesting English signs we found in the Multicultural Center and the library. Here is some of the data of the flyers we found on the 3rd floor of Newburger, the Multicultural Center, and the library. We collected an evidence of a total of 13 flyers and 9 languages other than English. Many of the languages we found were identifiable in the flyer screen we found in the upper right corner of the screen. We can see that this tutor perhaps identified some of the most spoken languages on campus in order to reach a wider base of students. Looking back at the map we saw in slide number 2, we can see that many of the languages on this list can be correlated back to the top 10 countries of origin on campus: South Korea, India, Saudi Arabia, etc. It is also noteworthy that 2 of 3 flyers that contain Japanese and 7 of 8 that contain Spanish were also mostly in English. Following up on that, we asked the question, which flyers and which languages are directed to what audience? We can make the hypothesis that these signs that are mostly or completely in Arabic and Chinese are directed at students who are either native speakers or very fluent in those languages. On the right-hand side, we see posters that include fragments of Spanish and Japanese in the titles, but English in the main body of the text. It seems as though these flyers are trying to get the viewer's attention, but not necessarily communicate any essential information with the viewer. Could this be considered as using these languages as a commodity? When we approached the people we wanted to interview, we said we were PSU students and had a class project that involved getting out in the public. We were sure to ask if they would be willing to be interviewed, including that they could opt out at any time during the questions if they wanted to stop. Some people were comfortable with being interviewed, but there were some people who were apprehensive and refused. We managed to get 6 interviews with some food cart employees and owners. Our first interview was with Rosemary Food Cart. Besides the Arabic verse from the Quran that was located on a sign in front of their cart, there was some other Arabic displayed. The owner mentioned that that was the easiest way to reach the brain and stomach of customers from the Arab homeland. The second cart we talked with was Sinbad. The owner speaks 4 different languages on top of being from Lebanon, and noted that most of their customers spoke some of the languages they speak. We saw another verse from the Quran hanging above the counter inside the cart, which we found out was the first verse of the book. We interviewed Dosirak, 3rd. The owner and his wife keep the cart running. They speak Korean with everyone who knows it, but tend to speak English with their customers. When we asked about the English signs on their cart, they mentioned that not many people speak or read Korean, hence why they needed the supplemental signage. When we arrived at Sultan's kitchen, we found that the woman working in the cart did not speak much English. Luckily, her business partner was there to help us get all the information we needed. We weren't sure of who the owner of the cart was, but we found out that both employees spoke English. One of the employees also spoke Arabic, while the other also spoke Turkish. In regards to the English displayed on their cart, their reason given was that there were so many American people who bought from the cart that it was necessary to have information readily available to them, the majority. At Couscous Factory, it wasn't obvious to us who the owner was or if any of the employees could say who the owner was, but the people we spoke to were very helpful. They mostly spoke Arabic and French, which they mentioned helps communication with some of the non-English speaking customers. When we asked about the English signage they had, they pointed out that the language spoken here, quote unquote, is English, that it was impractical to display any languages other than English. Lastly, we interviewed Krua Bangkok. The employee we talked with told us that they speak Thai, the owner speaks Japanese, and they both speak English. Most of their customers speak the languages they do, which helps to bridge the gap between buying and selling. There is a sign on their cart from the Thai Health Department, which anyone from Thailand or anyone who has visited Thailand would recognize. With the people we interviewed, there was a pretty even split between people who primarily wanted to share their language with the public and people who wanted to bridge the gap between English and non-English speakers. When the task is to sell enough food to break even, it's important to be able to communicate with your clientele what they want and what you have to offer. Because of that, some owners might be more inclined to include multiple languages on their carts and signage. The food carts on campus that we interviewed definitely correlated with the PSU student population. We can only assume that there are many, many other languages spoken in Portland besides just what is spoken at PSU. We saw a lot of additional languages and cultures represented throughout PSU buildings, like in the Multicultural Center, that weren't outright represented in the food cart pods we went to, but there was representation present.